Douglas Audit Committee. We're going to do a roll call identification of attendance because we have 3 people remotely. So if you just say your name. Mike, you want to start?
Mike Fitzpatrick.
Dick Vandenberg.
Howard D'Amico.
Heather Moran present.
Tim Bonin as well.
Okay, so Tim, Howard, and Heather are remote. So we have our quorum. And we also have via Zoom Andrew Gordon from Markham. So Andrew, welcome. So Jean, can you walk us through the issues for tonight?
I asked for this second meeting because Andrew had sent us notice based on the vote of the last meeting from the Audit Committee. There was going to be an additional $6,000 charge. I did not feel comfortable making that recommendation. First of all, we don't have it in the budget. We would need to seek either town meeting or reserve fund transfer. So I'm going to let Andrew explain why. I know there was the question asked by Howard whether or not there was an additional charge, and at the time the answer was no. But based on the scope of work and Andrew's conversations with Markham and their compliance, they said due to the number of items and the amount of testing they would have to do, that there would be an additional charge. So I'll let Andrew continue.
Okay, Andrew.
Thank you, Gene. Thank you, Gene. So I think, Gene, you explained that very well, where, last meeting, the goal was to present 2 options, where there was the agreed upon procedures option, and then there was the examination option. And the key difference being that it was voted on to have an opinion on the work we were going to do. And at that time, at least from what was originally discussed between Gene and I, what was discussed at the Audit Committee of having us review the invoices and the prices and comparing those to the contracts, I personally did not anticipate that being as much work as it ultimately ended up being discussed. So I'll just tell you, after that meeting, I met with one of Markham's quality control, I'll call it quality control partners, that was going to be in charge of this engagement. And we were discussing the scope of the work. And that's where it was determined that, if we were going to give an opinion on reviewing these invoices, that we were going to have to, or looking at testing anywhere between minimum 100 to upwards of even 140 invoices. If we wanted to give an opinion and do, substantial work that, I think what was voted upon, that was, again, the scope of the work needed. And then from there, I go to my other boss, Scott McIntyre, who some of you might know, who's the partner on the job. I go, Scott, this is the scope of the work we're looking at. And then that's when Scott says to me, we're going to have to charge an extra fee for that. And just to kind of go back a little to, I think what kind of led us here initially was, I know going back to the original request for proposal back, I think it was in June of 2023, where I think the proposal, might even have it up here, was the proposal discussed reviewing a department of the town. Bear with me, I did have that section up here. So the original proposal was an examination of the internal controls of the firm. In addition to the examination of internal controls, the firm shall examine a separate department of the town, chosen by the town for audit year, including a written evaluation of those systems and recommendation improvements of the same. So just to kind of give you a history of what that typically would involve is we would go in, let's say for the school lunch department, we would go in, we would take a look at the design of the controls in place over receipts, and then we would make any recommendations on any controls that we saw deficiencies with that weren't being implemented, and then that would be, again, we would do an evaluation based on that. So that's kind of what originally, when we see that in, let's say, a request for proposal, that's kind of what the audit work we typically do. Now, I understand, of course, once we got to the point of discussing looking at the school lunch invoices, it kind of became like a new or a different type of engagement of looking at this department. Hence, that last meeting we decided, or excuse me, it was decided to do the examination report. So that's kind of where we stand right now. Just again, like, yeah, I don't think I truly understood the scope that was going to be involved in doing an examination and ultimately providing an opinion.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Any questions for Andrew, anybody?
What is, so what was agreed upon in the agreement that we signed with you guys versus what we asked you at the last meeting? You wouldn't have gave us a written report on that or an opinion if you had done it the way you thought the scope was?
It would have been included in the overall opinion on the town. So normally when we do the town audit, there's just an overall opinion we give on the financial statements of the town, and we don't necessarily opine on the controls of the town. We don't, our audit, the purpose of our audit is not to provide an opinion on controls. And that's stated in the independent auditor's report.
So if I may, we have had, prior to COVID, we used to have, as part of the main audit, when the auditors were on site, they would choose a department to audit. And they would go into that department and they would do, mostly on the cash side, and Andrew was not our person at that time, it was Jen and Kelly. They would randomly choose somebody, they would go in, they would make sure the cash was locked up, they'd be looking for cash, they'd be looking to make sure you had numbered receipts, they would be making sure you had the cash register, they'd be looking to make sure things were secure. So we have done a number of internal audits, the police department, board of selectmen, town clerk, assessors, transfer station, board of health, building department, and each year it was a different person, a different department that was selected. It was never one. Not necessarily, this was definitely out of that scope.
Yeah, so, and I don't know if everybody agrees with me, but my understanding was when we left the last meeting, all we were looking for was to make sure that the invoices, what they're purchasing, was consistent with that French River agreement that we have, right? That contract, French River Collaborative, or whatever it is. So that's not what they would normally do? They wouldn't see?
That was not what they did previously. And again, it was pre-COVID where they were on site and they used to do those type of things, but it was more in the cash. Actually, they audited school lunch at the cash register one year. You know, I remember Kelly being at the register at the point of sale. And I won't speak for Markham or even Melanson. I wouldn't have, this would definitely, even when they do the main audit, you're not testing 100 to 150 invoices. You're on the vendor side, you're at 50 or 60. So you're
right.
Is that something you do internally, is to compare the invoices, spot check them every once in a while to make sure? I'm trying to get past where we are with this and try to put it to rest myself. I don't know how everybody else feels about it, but I don't think we should be spending $6,000 for them to read invoices. I have full confidence in your department as well.
Well,
the business side of the school, right?
So Andrew, in the original contract that we had with your company, if we kept within our original budgeted amount and we didn't go for the route that was the extra $6,000, would we still get an extra report on school lunches, or would that just be in the main report?
If you went and, let's say you went forward, you're saying with the 6,000 feet, correct?
No.
If we didn't do it.
What's in the contract?
If we stuck with our original plan and didn't go beyond what we can afford, in other words, if we didn't spend the $6,000, would there still be a separate report on school lunches or not?
There wouldn't be a separate report. If anything, there would probably be more of just a formal recommendation. Like, it would be probably in the form of an email, if anything, or we can even just do a one-page, just like these are you might be familiar with how Melanson used to do a management letter or a side letter. And Gene, you might remember those as well. I think that maybe that at the most that's what we would do. And again, I would have to discuss this back with our quality control and Scott as well, just to verify this. But I don't believe there would be a separate issued report.
Okay. Any questions from people on Zoom?
No.
Okay.
I have a question.
Okay, Jean, go ahead.
So if the audit committee chose school lunch as their department to audit, what would, with no extra fee, what would you see that as being, like,
Or with the scope? That
yeah, what would that look like?
I think the scope would probably be more what you're discussing, Gene, what you were discussing from a perspective of just looking at the controls of the department, how we typically have done departmental reviews for towns and cities across Massachusetts, where we have a format or a form that we utilize that, and it almost mirrors the town's receipt policy, where we would look through the controls of the department and just make sure that the handling of receipts is in line with the policy of the town's receipt policy, and making recommendations based off that.
So if they chose to not look at the receipt side, but look at the vendor side, so if they, without looking for a report from you, without looking at that 100, 150, could you do a smaller testing without providing a report? So they end up getting what they wanted, but you're just not going through that, to the extent that they originally asked for. Could you do that on a smaller scale?
Potentially, I guess we would need to know, because it's sounding more like an agreed upon procedures route. I mean, I'm just trying to, maybe I need to get a better understanding of what you're asking for, just because, again, I want to make sure that whatever's discussed here is like, again, I don't want there to be confusion after this and I come back and say, well, that's going to be this fee. I want to be clear with what exactly I think you're looking for at this point.
And I guess the reason why I say this is because on the receipt side for the school lunch, it's vastly different now, because school lunch meals are free. So we're charging for a la carte and the adults. So you're not getting, don't get me wrong, cash is cash. I don't care if you're collecting $10 or $1 million. I still want you to follow the policies and the procedures in place. But if their concern is on the vendor side, then I'm wondering what type of audit you could provide that you would have provided within the cost of the audit, understanding that you would not get a different report because it's part of the main, but at least they get that testing. You're testing the vendor versus testing the receipt.
What, excuse me just a second.
Well, I can tell you, Gene, just to, I guess, just take a step back. We did, in a way, do a part of that with in our single audit of the school lunch program. We did test 40 transactions, looking at controls and compliance with the federal nutrition program requirements. So in a way, we have done some extensive testing already from that standpoint from our single audit. So I guess I want to make sure we're not maybe doubling up on our work as well.
So the proposal that we put out for an audit, and Markham is who we hired, did it say a general audit of the whole town plus another department? Is that how it was worded?
Yeah.
But vaguely.
I can read that to you again if you need me to.
Yeah, read that again, would you?
Yeah, I'll read that again. So it says here, in addition to the examination of internal controls, the firm shall also examine a separate department of town government chosen by the town per audit year, including a written evaluation of those systems and recommended improvements of same.
So if the audit committee felt that that school department or that extra department was the lunch program, right? Is that how you name it? And just asked Markham to do what they do given our original budget, That's something you guys could do, Andrew?
Yeah, and we certainly could. And Gene, just again, I think you'd be familiar with what we've done historically. It would be more, when it says here what I read, including a written evaluation of those systems, it would be much more along the lines of going through the controls and our evaluation of the controls of the school lunch department, and then recommending improvements based on that. Like, that's typically how we interpreted reviewing a department of a town.
So committee members, what's your sense, just generally speaking? Do you want to instruct Markham to do what the written proposal was and stick within the original budget? Or do you want to try to find the $6,000 from somewhere else and get more detail? Howard, what's your opinion?
My opinion is I would defer to either Gene or Matthew to see what the original purpose of trying to get this audit was.
Okay. Heather, you have an opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like Howard just said, is to what end, right? What was the initial intent? If it's going to cost an extra $6,000, do we have that available for us? And can it be done in a timely manner? Because we'd like to have this paid this year, not next year, correct, Gene?
Yes.
How about you, Tim?
I have a hard time spending additional monies for something that, I think when we were looking at this, it could have, while there might have been a school lunch issue, I think that has long since passed. The thought of spending $6,000 just to confirm that the changes have been made, I don't think that's necessary. If there's value in kind of the watered down look, I think we keep it there. If not, cognizant that this is the 2023 audit, I'd like to put this to rest and just know that 24 is coming right around the corner. So I would maybe consider another department, one that falls within the scope that would provide value to us, and we'd save $6,000 in the process.
So Gene, if we stuck with the lower cost of the two, in other words, if we stuck with the original proposal and we didn't spend the extra $6,000, as you hear Andrew describe what kind of information we would get from them, would that be adequate in your opinion?
First of all, I can't comment. I mean, in the sense that it's, well, you're auditing my books.
You're putting her in a position, so.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yep.
Yeah.
You can answer that if you want, Gene, but if I could just add to what the other three members have said already. I agree with what they're saying. I think we should stay in the confines of the original contract of how we put it out there. And internally, I think that we could do a spot check on our own, and if you find that there's no difference between the contract pricing and what the invoices are, then it's pretty much a done issue. Like Tim just pointed out, this has been going on for quite some time. I think we're well past it, and we should just put it to rest.
Andrew's correct.
I make a motion to decide not to increase the scope of the audit.
So Howard, just a point of order there. I think we need to first have a motion to reconsider the motion that we did on April 23, and then once we have a motion to reconsider, then we have a new motion. I think that's kind of how it works. So everybody clear on that?
Yeah.
So we need a motion then to reconsider the motion that was approved by the Finance Committee on April 23, 2022, having to do with the scope of the audit. Would somebody make that motion?
So moved.
Okay, Heather moves it.
Seconded.
Howard, you seconded it?
Yes.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion?
No.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Got to go through the roll call because we're on Zoom.
Oh, right. Okay.
Mike Fitzpatrick, aye.
Dick Vandenberg, aye.
Go ahead, Heather.
You guys on
Heather
Zoom?
Morgan, aye.
I'll go
Howard
first.
D'Amico, aye.
Tim Bone and I.
So the motion carries unanimously. So Howard, you have a motion, a new motion then?
Before that, I just want
Okay.
Andrew to be very clear, if they still choose school lunch as the department, what they will receive at the end of this, because it will not be what you originally decided.
We're going to stay within his scope of the contract.
Okay, so,
Understood, Gene.
and how would you do it on the receipt side, Andrew, or would you do it on the vendor side?
It would just be on the receipt side, Jane.
Yeah.
Is how we would operate that. Just, again, that would be more of a focus on the controls on the receipt side.
So, okay, so
And then we
Howard,
would issue, there wouldn't be a report issued, Gene, that would be more of just if there was any deficiencies in the controls, we would make recommendations based on that.
And
But as I'm saying that too, Gene, I want to double check again, because, you know, we did an audit of the school lunch program and we did an audit of both. That's a dual purpose audit where you audit both compliance with federal guidelines, but you're also auditing the design and implementation of controls over the compliance. So it's, again, that's a dual purpose audit that's formed for the single audit of the school lunch program. And therefore, again, we kind of, I think when our original intent is, what's coming to mind right now when we chose the school lunch program is it kind of went along with like, okay, the RFP, or it was decided, excuse me, to look at the school lunch program, and we said, well, this is great, like, we can accomplish that via the single audit. So just to, I guess, to give you an idea of our original intent in doing the school lunch program as a single audit was it was covering, just going back to that RFP again, where it says a written evaluation of those systems and recommended improvements. You know, that to me, our intent of doing the single audit of the school lunch program was to cover that. And I think we did that. So again, I'm not sure, I feel like we might potentially just be doubling up on our work versus, again, we issued a report on the school lunch program.
so in your opinion, you've already, if they chose school lunch as the department, you've already covered this. And the reason why we have to have a single audit is because the town received more than $750,000 in federal funds. So school lunch, they choose certain grants, in this case, school lunch, and EDA was chosen as well, where we have to provide a lot of information for the single audit. So they have the main audit, they have the single audit, and within that single audit, they chose at least those two where we had to provide information. So,
Correct.
in your opinion, then, there would be no additional work for Markham. You've already satisfied, if they chose school lunch, you've already satisfied that condition of the main audit.
I would say we have. I mean, we certainly did comprehensive work on the school lunch program from both a control standpoint and a compliance standpoint.
And for full disclosure, we filed the single audit today, and there were no findings on the single audit.
That is correct.
So you already received the report
We
from the school?
We filed the single audit where they've done, with the federal government, so they've done their single audit, and there were no findings on, not just
On
school
it.
lunch,
Okay.
but on I forget what the other, I thought there were three. I know EDA, school lunch,
The
and,
three programs we audited was the school lunch program, the economic adjustment assistance program, and then we did the ARPA.
oh, yeah,
We audited that as well.
yeah.
So we don't need a motion?
Unless
If
you
the work's already been
chose-
done, there's nothing to vote on to have them do.
well, I think for the record, we should have a motion that we recommend that Markham do the work of the original scope or something like that, just to have it, it's already done.
Upon reconsideration of the motion from the April 23rd meeting, which we just approved the reconsideration, I hereby move that we do not change the original scope of the audit.
Second.
Okay, so Howard moves, Mike seconds, any discussion on the motion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote again because we're on Zoom. So
Mike Fitzpatrick, aye.
Dick Vandenberg, aye.
Heather.
Heather Moore, aye.
Howard D'Amico, aye.
Tim Bone and I.
Okay, that passes unanimously.
Thank you, Andrew.
Do we have
Thank you,
any,
Andrew.
we need him to stay?
Pleasure talking with everyone.
Well,
Okay,
you will need
Have
to
a good
pick another
evening.
department for next year.
okay. Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, anytime.
Okay.
And audit committee members, are you able to vote on the minutes of April 23? Those were in your email. Have you had a chance to look at those yet?
You got one thumbs up?
I'll abstain. I don't think I was there.
Okay, then,
Tim was absent.
then we don't have our quorum, right? No, you
No.
need 3 to do it, right?
Yeah, no, Howard was there. Howard, you good with it?
I would have to move to another room and read them very quickly if I'm the third person.
Well, you're the fourth person, so.
I'll come right back. Am I the third person needed?
Well,
No, we got 3 now.
Okay.
Heather, myself, and Mr. Vandenberg.
you want to make a motion then, Mike?
Make a motion to approve the minutes of April 23rd, 2024 as written.
So Mike moves it,
Second?
Heather seconds. Discussion on the motion, anybody? All in favor, say aye.
Aye, Mike Fitzpatrick, aye.
Yeah. Dick Vandenberg.
Heather Moore.
Okay, motion passes. Do we have any other business for tonight? Gene, when Mike?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, Howard moves, we adjourn. Mike seconds. All in favor, say aye. Roll call.
Aye.
Mike Fitzpatrick, aye.
Dick Vandenberg, aye.
Howard D'Amico, aye.
Okay.
Tim Bone and I.
All right, we adjourn
Thank you.
at 6:29. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.